What's up, guys? This is X&O's TV, and today I'm going to do my very first Steelers mock draft. Now, the Steelers, in my opinion, are a very interesting team this year because you have potential turnover for this franchise that you really haven't seen in almost 20 years. Basically, since Ben Roethlisberger was drafted, this has been a very stable franchise in terms of the free agents you're going to maintain. Like, pretty much going into every offseason, we know who's coming and who's going. Well, not who's coming, but we know who's being retained and who we're losing. This year, it's a huge wild card of who we're going to keep and what our roster might look like going into the draft. The bulk of this video will be a mock draft, but you simply can't do it until you understand the needs and wants for your roster. Just so for the sake of argument, I'm going to do a prediction of who I think we're going to keep in free agency. So I got Mike Hilton, James Conner, Villanueva, Matt Filer, Bud Dupree, Vince Williams, and Avery Williamson. And obviously we know about Marquise Pouncey and Vance McDonald retiring. So you guys might disagree with that. That's okay. That's just my prediction. And I wouldn't be surprised if we keep one or two of those guys on that list. But then again, I also wouldn't be surprised if we couldn't afford them. Now, the guys I'm hoping to keep and pretty confident we'll keep is Zach Banner, Cam Sutton, and probably the most controversial pick here is JuJu Smith-Schuster. I just don't like the idea of losing a 24-year-old with a ton of production. Zach Banner, I think, will be pretty cheap coming off the ACL injury. And then Cam Sutton, I think you have to keep Mike Hilton or Cam Sutton. Cam Sutton's a little bit more versatile and probably the cheaper option. So now that we have our free agency set, we can move straight into the mock draft. Okay, so with the first pick, I got the Steelers taking Pat Freiermuth, the tight end out of Penn State. Now, I get some people might be confused about this and think this is a reach. That's okay. I think as long as we understand that the Steelers need to fix this run game, it has to be the priority. If you think drafting Najee Harris in the first round is going to fix the Steelers' run game woes, cool. Or if you think it's drafting the center or offensive tackle, cool. I agree with all that. I don't want to see a linebacker, and I don't want to see a corner. We got to do something about this offense. It sucks, straight up. So I'm going a different route. I'm getting Pat Freiermuth, a tight end I know who can block and get open over the middle of the field, and that's just something that you don't have on your roster right now. You got Eric Ebron, but he can't run block for shit. Okay, he can get open. He's a good receiver, but run blocking's not his thing. And I promise you, if you go back and watch the tape of the Steelers offense last year, this is a big reason why the Steelers can't run the football. They're getting dominated on the edges, their tackles and their tight end. So, I think the addition of Kevin Dotson and maybe Zach Banner, I think that's going to help some of this stuff. So I don't think getting a tackle is a super need, although I wouldn't hate it. Like, I could totally see it. But I think I don't think they're going to throw Chukwuekorfor in the trash. He's 24 years old, okay? And then I think the other guy, Zach Banner at right or left tackle, him, Kevin Dotson, and then an addition of a new center is really going to help your run game. Plus, if you get this guy who can run block, he can be in line and go after a defensive end, and go after a linebacker, it's really going to help you. So, but I just want to be clear. I understand the other picks. I'm not saying like it has to be this guy or nothing else. I really like him. I think he could be our next franchise tight end, sort of like how Heath Miller was, even though they're completely different players. I think it's time for the Steelers to invest into the tight end position again, and their lack of investment in the position is really coming back to haunt them, and it has the past 10 years. They need a tight end who can be a threat over the middle of the field and help them in the run game. Now, he's probably like an early second round pick, so I can see like why people would think this is more of a reach. He ain't going to be there in the second round at 55. I don't think he gets out of the top 50 at all, and there's a chance he doesn't even get out of the top 40. Okay, so if you want to get this guy, unless you trade back, you're probably going to have to pull the trigger on him in the first round. Otherwise, after Kyle Pitts and after Pat Freiermuth, the tight end is barren. The position is terrible. So I think You pull the trigger on your franchise tight end, and you seal up that position. You seal up one position of need for the next 5 years. Okay, so another reason I took a tight end in the first was because I was impressed with how deep this tackle class is. It's not like last year where you had like 4 or 5 studs who were going to go in the first round. This year, you do have 2 or 3 guys who are definitely top 15, 20 picks for sure, but that doesn't help the Steelers, okay? Fortunately for them, there are guys in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round who could really help this team, not just this year, but in the future. So my draft pick in the 2nd round for the Steelers at 55 is Spencer Brown. He's 6'8", 320. His story is really interesting. He was a tight end who was recruited in Northern Iowa. A bit of a tweener. He's 6'8", like 200, 220, something like that, and they didn't really know what to do with him. He ends up bulking up and building a ton of strength. I actually saw a video of him bench pressing 500 pounds at 6'8", which is extremely impressive with those super long arms. But after building all this mass, this healthy mass, he became a dominant tackle for Northern Iowa. Now, the biggest knock on Spencer Brown is the fact that, well, he went to Northern Iowa, and the edge competition there isn't great. He was very good at run blocking, but everyone kind of knew that just based on the tangibles, right? So what really impressed me was him at the Senior Bowl. I saw him after going through the tape of the Senior Bowl game and all the practices. I was impressed enough. I think some people think his stock went down because he had some trouble with speed rushers, but that's expected with a big guy who doesn't have the best coaching. I mean, no offense to Northern Iowa, but he just didn't see this sort of speed and athleticism that he saw at the Senior Bowl. And he's going to get with an NFL coach who can teach him and show him better technique on how to do proper pass sets, because that's really what it is. He's just not dropping back. He's not getting in his pass sets quick enough, and he's getting too wide. He's giving up the inside too much. It happened in the game. It happened a couple times in practice. I think you work out the kinks with him. He has tremendous upside and can be a dominant run blocker. I can see him being a right tackle and Zach Banner being the left tackle, and then this team just blowing people off the line of scrimmage. I would love to get this guy in the 2nd round. I don't think he lasts until the late 3rd round when the Steelers pick. So if they want to get him, they want to get this tackle, this big tackle with all this upside, they're going to have to pull the trigger on him in the 2nd round. And I would be cool with it. Okay, there's other tackles I like, but this guy is a monster. Okay, so you're going to see a trend in this mock draft, and it's guys who have played in the Senior Bowl, okay? I know how the Steelers draft, and it's not that they absolutely won't take a player who hasn't played since 2019, but I know it will be important for them to have seen a player actually play football recently. So Senior Bowl attendees, guys who have played the 2020 season, I think will be extremely important. With that said, I'm not ruling out opt-outs or anything like that, but I know how the Steelers draft. So for my next pick, I got Michael Carter in the 3rd round, the running back from North Carolina. Now, he split time with Javonte Williams, another great running back, probably going to go in the 2nd round from UNC, but he was at the Senior Bowl and he was extremely impressive, and I really like running backs like him who are elusive and able to create positive plays from nothing. I was a big fan of Cam Akers when he came out last year because he played behind a terrible offensive line but was still able to be productive, and that translates to the NFL because the blocking in the NFL isn't great, and you're going to have to make plays and you're going to have to make people miss. Michael Carter can do that. Now, the reason he's not any higher, the knock on him, is his size, right? He's a great receiver and he's a great running back. He has great vision, but can he pass protect? In a passing league, you're going to need a running back big enough to take on linebackers or edge rushers. Okay, it's very important. That's why Najee Harris is going in the first round, even though Najee Harris played behind probably the best offensive line in college football, because he's a big, sturdy guy who can also pass block and be a receiving option. So I don't see a huge difference. I mean, it is a big difference. They're completely different running backs, but I would love the addition of Michael Carter. Maybe not as much as Najee Harris, but I don't see like a huge drop-off there for the Steelers. Not for every team, but for the Steelers, because I still have faith in Benny Snell. I still have faith in Anthony McFarland. So adding a talented running back to this stable of running backs, I think, is extremely important, and instead of just drafting one featured guy and throwing the other guys in the trash. I mean, it takes time, you know what I mean? And with so many issues with the offensive line and tight end and all this stuff, I don't fully blame the running backs. So adding another talented player to compete, especially one who had such an impressive senior ball, I'm all for. So in my last pick, I talked about how important it is for the Steelers to take guys who have played football recently, senior ball, 2020 season, and then in this pick, I take Kerry Vincent Jr., who hasn't played since 2019. But good football players are good football players, and the tape that he put out from LSU as a nickel corner is really impressive. He played a little bit of safety too. We need a nickel corner, okay? So we're probably going to lose Mike Hilton or Cam Sutton. I don't think we lose both, but definitely one of them. And you're going to have to replace that. You're going to have to get a guy who can develop or maybe even play in some sub packages. This guy can do it. He's super fast. He's not as physical as Mike Hilton. He's not as good in the run game, but he has great ball skills, as you see here. Fantastic. One-hand interceptions. He has the speed to cover guys and recover if he does get beat. Also, he has the speed to blitz off the edge and make great plays. So I was really impressed with his LSU tape, even though it was from 2019. The Steelers have some bad luck drafting secondary players, at least early. But, I mean, with Cam Sutton, it seemed like a good pick. So I'm hoping if the Steelers keep it to, the mid-rounds, they could find some success. But either way, it's definitely a need. I'm hoping he's there at the top of the fourth round when the Steelers pick with their first pick. Well, it's actually like the end of the fourth round. I'm hoping he's there. I don't know for sure he will. He might be a third rounder. But so this is kind of being optimistic here. Very popular pick in Steeler mock drafts. I would love to have Kerry Vincent Jr. Okay, so this next pick was actually my favorite pick of the entire draft. Some people might disagree with it because it's a center taken pretty late in the draft. I get it, okay? So, I would be okay with taking a center in the top 3 picks there, but after watching David Moore from Grambling State at the Senior Bowl, this kid could be what Kevin Dotson was for us last year, from a small school, come out and really dominate, and either probably not take over the starting position year one, but develop that first year, and you probably sign like an outside guy, a free agent, to come in and start for you this year with Ben Roethlisberger, and then this guy waits in the wings and takes over the job next year. Now, he's 6'1", 350, and listen, for center, that's a little bit too heavy. He's probably, if he was smart, he would lose like 20, 25 pounds, 25, 30 pounds. But what's crazy about him is he's super athletic at that weight, and the biggest issue for short guys is their arm length, okay? That's why you want taller guys, because taller guys means longer arms, and that means that they can grab onto somebody and punch somebody better than somebody with shorter arms, right? Well, this guy has freakishly long arms. He's got almost a 7-foot wingspan at 6'1". When he walks, his knuckles drag on the ground. It's insane. He's extremely powerful and athletic, like I said before. I'm going to show you some clips of him at the Senior Bowl. He dominated guys, okay? Like, some of these guys are first-round picks, and he's just bullying them. Now, his technique needs to get a little bit better. His ass is too high. He needs to bend his knees a little bit. But that's just, he gets in with an NFL coach, and I'm telling you, this guy's going to be dominant. I really like him, and I think he would be an absolute steal at this spot. I'm hoping, I don't think he'll go in the third round because centers usually go late anyways, but that's what he needs to do. He needs to switch to center full time, lose a little bit of weight, and he could be starting for the Pittsburgh Steelers by his probably second year. All right, so next up for the Steelers, I got them taking Jalen Moore, offensive lineman from Western Michigan. I think every NFL team should take a chance on linemen late in the draft. In my opinion, these guys just have a better chance of hitting and being successful. And I think that's because when you compare it to other positions and other players transitioning from college to the pros, they just have different learning curves that they have to conquer before they can compete with professional athletes. Like a quarterback has to learn all of these different things and has this huge mental aspect to their game that they first have to develop before they become good players, where linemen just really have to get stronger. These are young kids who have to grow into their grown man body and mature physically, right? So that's the first knock on Jalen Moore. He has to get stronger. But once he does, I think he has a great opportunity to not only be a great depth piece for a offensive line, but a potential starter. He has great agility and athleticism. Also, I thought he was pretty strong at the Senior Bowl. Now, when we're looking at his Western Michigan tape, he just really didn't face anybody who I would consider as elite. Like, Toledo doesn't have first-round talent. Ball State doesn't have great edge rushers, right? But once he got to the Senior Bowl and could compete with these potential first and second round prospects, I thought he handled himself well. Maybe was the most impressive player at the Senior Bowl. Probably an offensive guard at the next level. He doesn't really have that supreme length that you want from an offensive tackle, but the Steelers need depth at all positions, and I think this is a guy that you could draft and develop and could potentially start for you later down the road, and if not, could play guard or tackle in a pinch for this team in a year or two. All right, so now we're in the 7th round of my Pittsburgh Steelers mock draft, and one position they absolutely need to get is a edge defender to be a depth option behind TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith. Bud Dupree is gone, okay? And I don't know if they're going to be bringing back Ola Daney, so I think they need to go out there and draft a guy with some upside. William Bradley King is a perfect option, okay? He played Arkansas State, had a lot of production, was a graduate transfer, came over to Baylor, and he didn't have the sacks like he did at Arkansas State. But where he can help you is in run defense, okay? He reminds me a lot of Alex Highsmith. He's not super duper athletic, but he's very powerful. He has experience as a stand-up edge and as a defensive end inside, going up against offensive guards and offensive tackles. He can give you 10-15 snaps a game and not kill you in the run game. And that's the biggest thing about your depth at edge. They have to be able to stop the run. They don't need to give you 10 sacks a game. Just be able to set that edge and dominate some tight ends. He also really impressed at the Senior Bowl, so I don't know if he's going to be a 7th round pick anymore. I think before the Senior Bowl he definitely was. Now he could go higher. He did really well against these top level prospects on the offensive line at the Senior Bowl. So by showing his really good hands and his technique and all the power he has, he could go higher. But if the Steelers can get him in the 7th round, he would be an absolute perfect option. All right, so finally, with the last pick of my Steelers mock draft, I got them taking Garrett Wallow, the inside linebacker from TCU, who I think would be a smart choice, especially if we lose Avery Williamson or Vince Williams especially. He kind of reminds me of Tyler Matakevich, where there's a need at the position right now as a backup, but also I think he could be a very productive special teams player. He's not going to be a starter, I don't think, at least. You don't want this guy starting, especially in today's game. His pass coverage is his worst aspect, and he doesn't necessarily excel at stopping the run because he struggles at getting off of blocks, but he's a reliable tackler, he has a good motor, and he does have some athleticism. He was a former safety in high school. So I do like the pick. I really do. I just don't. When you're talking about late 7th round picks, I mean, it's really hard for me to be like, oh, yeah, this guy's going to be an excellent player in a couple of years. Probably not. He's probably just going to be a special teams player. And if you get a reliable special teams player like a Tyler Matakevich, I think it's a win-win for this Steelers team. Okay, so now that I wrapped up my Steelers mock draft, I want to quickly do an overview of what this team could look like in the 2021 season. This video is already too long, so I want to very fast just go over it. This is not a full 53-man roster or like a perfect example of a 2021 depth chart for the Steelers. It's just a brief overview of pretty much the starters, the guys you expect to see on the field on game day. So quickly, the quarterback, I obviously expect them to keep Ben Roethlisberger for one more season. He's your starting quarterback. The running backs. Now, if you don't draft Najee Harris or a Javonte Williams early in the draft and you take a guy later like a Michael Carter in the third, you're basically saying we want a running back by committee. That's basically what you're saying, which would be different than what Mike Tomlin has done in the past, okay? Because he usually prefers a featured back. So that's, the main point and the takeaway from Michael Carter. But I would love to try something different because whatever we've been doing really hasn't been working. Some people say, well, we need a featured back. I say you can do it with a committee as long as you have blockers up front. The wide receiver, if you keep JuJu Smith-Schuster, you don't really need to invest on wide receiver in the draft. I mean, you're pretty much set there with the 4 guys that you had last year. You really just need to ask yourself, who's going to return kickoffs and be our punt returner? And maybe that's Ray McLeod again, who did a pretty good job last year. That's something to keep an eye out for. The tight ends, obviously, if you take Pat Freiermuth, you feel much better about the tight end depth and just the players you have there. I mean, I think the idea of having 2 tight ends, like Eric Ebron's not much of a blocker, but now this opens up the possibility for 12 personnel and doing things like that, not just affecting the ability to run the football. The guy behind those 2 would probably be Zach Gentry, and that's just a much better position group for the Steelers. But in turn, you would have to take a tight end early, right? The offensive tackle, I feel great about Zach Banner, Chuks Okorafor, and Spencer Brown. Spencer Brown obviously would be in a backup role, and you would probably expect Banner and Chuks to be the starters at right and left tackle. I'd be okay with that, and that's why I don't have a ton of pushback on the idea of taking an offensive tackle in the first round, but I don't think it's like super necessary. I don't think they're going to bench Chuks after a full year of starting, only being 24 years old. I think the guy's only going to get better. And then if Zach Banner comes back healthy from his injury, you have him. And then you have Spencer Brown waiting in the wing. I think that would be perfect. Offensive guard, same thing. You got David DeCastro, Kevin Dotson. Jalen Moore gives you that kind of Matt Filer role where he can play offensive guard, he can play offensive tackle for you, and just provide solid depth and sits in the wings and develops and maybe takes over for David DeCastro or Chuks Okorafor next year or something like that. Center is the biggest issue, okay, because by taking a center late in the 4th round, you're still not certain about who is your starter. And the Steelers never want to draft a player and expect him to be a day 1 starter. J.C. Hassenauer's okay, but you wouldn't feel great if he was your starting center. Like, let's be real. So I think if this was the path the Steelers took, you would probably expect them to sign a center in free agency and bring him over and add more stability to that position. So you would have J.C. Hassenauer, a rookie, and then a free agent that you felt better about potentially starting for you. On the defense side of the ball, for safety, you feel good about that. The only question is, what happens to Sean Davis? Does Sean Davis go? Does he stay? If he goes, you're probably going to have to sign a veteran safety to potentially play the post or strong safety just in case of an injury. Cornerback, you feel great about it if you can get yourself a slot corner. Okay, you have 4 guys who can all play on the boundary. Joe Hayden, Steven Nelson, Cam Sutton, who is versatile, can play in and out. And then obviously you just need somebody to back up Cam Sutton in case of an injury, or an injury to Joe Hayden and Steven Nelson, and Cam Sutton has to play outside. So you just want that depth there, that developmental player. Kerry Vincent is perfect for that. You still have Justin Lane and James Pierre, hopefully developing. Inside linebacker, some people don't like the idea of losing Avery Williamson, losing Vince Williams, and not investing heavily in the draft. Me, I don't really care. I'm cool with taking a guy late like a Garrett Wallow, because you still got UG3, and the truth of the matter is Devin Bush and Robert Spillane are probably not going to come off the field. So unless injury, you don't really need a guy to step up, and I think you could just play that by ear. If you have an injury, then just maybe trade for somebody or sign somebody. But right now, I feel good about those 4 or 5 guys, including Marcus Allen, depending on what happens to him. Edge rusher is the same thing. TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith are the starters. You just need depth. William Bradley King provides that. And then maybe you have another guy like Ola Danny, J-Ron Elliott, somebody like that. Defensive line, it's the same as last year. You're not missing anybody. You're not losing anybody. You still got your all-pro defensive ends, Cam Hayward, Stephon Tuitt. Defensive tackles, Tyson Alualu. You still got Carlos Davis. You still have Isaiah Buggs. You still have Henry Mondo. Those guys are quality depth players, and that's all you need. And then this is just a brief glance of the 2021 roster. I think you could feel really good about this team if they go this route, But this is just my take. I know I've seen 100 different mock drafts. People have all these different opinions. So just know I wouldn't get too hung up on the positioning of the draft. Just get a feel for the actual players and the positions they play and the depth they provide. Like, that's what you really need to worry about, not where, like, oh, this guy was taken in the 2nd round instead of the 3rd round. Like, that's not you don't know. Nobody knows where any of these guys are going to get picked. Some of them haven't even played in over a year. So just, do you agree or disagree on some of the guys that I picked and how they fill out the roster? That's basically the main gist of this video and the discussion that I'm trying to open up about the Steelers 2021 season. So let me know in the comments. I appreciate you guys watching. Thanks again, and I'll see you next week.